Hello, welcome back everybody to the Quick Carbon Podcast, episode 9. This is a podcast, so it will primarily be audio with a shifting visual backdrop, all of the images of which are pieces of my own photography if anyone does want to actually see them. However, I do have individual videos specifically for that, featuring all the individual shots taken each year. Links to those are in the description below, along with my PayPal and Patreon if anyone wants to support me and everything. And now on to recent developments. Now, the real drop is actually materializing and becoming plainly visible. U.S. oil consumption, and within that, gasoline consumption and jet fuel consumption have dropped to low levels not seen since half a century ago. But this is definitely the biggest consumption drop that has ever come about. And this all due, of course, as everybody knows, because of the situation, the medical situation, we'll say. Because you can't actually say the exact words because apparently the YouTube algorithm picks those up and automatically demonetizes your video. So because of the situation, consumption levels, not just in the US, but almost everywhere, have dropped dramatically, at least in countries that are being hit with the situation. Except for China. China is now actually recovered and is coming back online. Even in terms of travel, most of their internal domestic flights are back up and running. What's really still lacking are their international airline flights. However, a lot of those are actually because of those particular countries cutting off most of their own travel and aviation, not because China isn't letting people in, but obviously, for the most part, at the moment, any and all travel between them and Europe is still down, and travel between them and the US and Canada is still down. But again, that being on the part of Europe and the US and Canada, because said nations and groups of nations are now dealing with their boom phase of this medical situation. However, thankfully, it is reaching its height or its peak in the U.S. and for many European countries has already passed its peak. Their case numbers have already peaked and they've been dropping for about a week now. You know, along the lines of new daily cases going from like 10,000 down to 8,000, then down to 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, and recently only 3,000. So they should hopefully be cleared sort of by the end of the month. And the US got started later, so it's going to take the US a bit longer than that. But at least overall, it is looking like the harsh, severe portion of this should have relatively died down by June or so. But for the moment, its impacts are plain and evident. Those coming in these numbers: U.S. oil consumption overall, across all products, total oil consumption has dropped down to about 14.5 million barrels a day. A number the U.S. has not been at since way back in 1971. Back around when the U.S. only had about a little over half the population that it currently does. U.S. gasoline consumption is down at around 5 million barrels per day, a number the U.S. has not been down at since 1972. Again, for much the same reason. Diesel fuel consumption in the U.S. remains relatively normal, 3.8 million barrels per day for this past week. U.S. jet fuel consumption has dropped down to only 755,000 barrels a day, the lowest that it's been in 45 years since the mid-70s. U.S. oil production, for the moment, again, remains at 13 million barrels per day. We're seeing that lag between the rig count drop and the production drop. U.S. electricity demand also hit a new low, as, again, with the exception of stores and hospitals and a few other things, basically everything's closed. So apart from essential buildings and homes, everything's empty, and, so many businesses and buildings have nothing on inside because nobody's there, nobody's doing anything. So U.S. electricity demand is super low and hit a new low on, I believe it was Sunday or Saturday in the middle of the night, dropping all the way down to only 316 gigawatts of active electricity demand. The current range fluctuating between 316 as the trough in the middle of the night, the low point, and the peak in the middle of the day being 453 as of the moment. Whereas normally it would be a low point in the middle of the night at this time of year around 430 or so, and a high point during the middle of the day of just above 500, maybe 510, to give you some context of the number drop. But that's about it for this episode, so thank you everybody for listening in. Obviously, if you enjoy listening, hit the like button. Also subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to my other channel too, my aviation and travel channel. So I'm still trying to get that one to 1,000 subs so I can monetize that one. Again, especially with the current situation, if any of you guys would like to help, PayPal and Patreon are also down in the description below. Only if you're financially able to, obviously. May God bless you all, and I'll see you all around next time.